Hey there, fight fans. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe this episode of Combat Sports Talk. Welcome to Combat Sports Talk, a podcast dedicated to UFC and Bellator discussion, the MMA community, and combat sports in general. I'm your host, Ryan Smith, and joining me tonight is the man with the keys to victory, John Keys.
That's right. It's tonight. It's not today.
It's not today.
It's not today. We had, life is what happens when we're busy making other plans. So, yeah.
That's right.
9 o'clock. It's been a while since we've done something like this, isn't it? It's been a while.
It actually is. And so, I'm actually good with it, though, because on the one hand, it's a little bit later, but maybe folks are out there, they're just finishing up football games and stuff like that, and they're like, hey, those guys are coming out there. They're going to do a little bit of a show. I'm going to see if I can catch them and see what they have to talk about tonight. Kick their feet up.
We're talking crazy. That's
tonight. We got to talk crazy. Like the headline, the headline of this week is Triller Legends 2: Holyfield versus Vitor Belfort. Like that is crazy and insanity in and of itself.
All the way around, man. And this it's a bit of a history lessons on both sides, man. Because what I saw, we've seen it before. Right. And we saw it a long time ago. Well, let's get into it, man.
Let's just go ahead and get into it. This is the official decision. This is the official decision. This is where we talk about the fights on Saturday night. And it was Triller Fight Club Legends 2, Holyfield versus Belfort, Saturday, September 11th, 2021, at the Seminole Hard Rock Hotel and Casino in Hollywood, Florida. Hollywood, Florida. It's the lesser known of the Hollywoods. But it can be a popular venue for combat sports. So there were 4 fights on the card. David Haye defeated Joe Fournier via unanimous decision. John O'Carroll defeated Andy Vences via majority decision. In the co-main event, we had Anderson, the Spider Silva, who defeated the Huntington Beach bad boy Tito Ortiz via knockout in round 1.
It was just because Tito was having it until he wasn't having it. Literally, it's one of those situations that he was beating up on Anderson Silva until Anderson Silva made people realize why he's such feared fighter in the world of mixed martial arts, because he pounded him right on the side of his head with the perfect hook, and that was it. And Tito hit the ground. And I'm still trying to figure out what dream he was having, because he was smiling on the ground. I don't know if it was the I just got paid and hit the ground type thing or what. Okay. He was out, and that was it. And oh my God. Oh.
You guys want to go see a dead body?
Exactly.
It was a dead body.
Smiling.
Yeah, a smiling. It was funny because in watching the replay, Anderson Silva was backed in the corner, and Tito Ortiz is throwing these little tight, short hooks into Anderson Silva, who was really turtling up and creating that shell. And then all of a sudden, Anderson dips under and then just goes boom, one shot, and it was over. Tito Ortiz just fell out.
Yep, and that was that. And it was just hilarious because there were people on the interwebs that was sitting there saying, "Oh yeah, Tito's is a legend. He'll take care of Anderson Spider Silva." I'm like, you realize that Anderson was the first guy that we saw go backwards and knock somebody out,
right? And that was Forrest Griffin, right?
That was Forrest Griffin, and he broke his face. On top of that, that was the bad part. He was going backwards and punched him and broke his nose. He broke Chris Lieben's face. He one shot, one kicked
Vitor Belfort.
Belfort, that we'll talk about some, that's on the UFC. What is it? UFC 2 cover. The game UFC 2. It showed, his foot all the way into his face like it was a Mortal Kombat scene,
pushing that bone into his brain. This is like blam, you're out.
Exactly. We people do not forget these old martial artists are not just because they're old. That does not mean they're not lethal. All right, that's the thing.
But I think that we're starting to see the emergence of a mixed martial arts prototype that can be successful in boxing. Because when we start looking at the mixed martial arts fighters who have fallen to boxers, not that Tito Ortiz is a boxer, Tito Ortiz is a wrestler, right?
Yes.
And so you get these Muay Thai strikers and these boxers, and you put them in the ring, and you give them a boxing gloves. Like that is more closely aligned to the types of fighting that they're used to fighting. So there's no wonder that Ben Askren gets knocked out. It's no wonder that Tyron Woodley gets beaten. No wonder that Tito Ortiz gets beaten, because striking is not their base style. When you get someone like Anderson Silva, who is a Muay Thai or who's a kickboxer and who is a boxer, this is what he does.
Yeah. So, this is where I want to see, and I'll be the first one to say it. This is where I want to see the Diaz brothers. I want to see the Diaz brothers box, because they have that is their secondary base style is technical striking boxing.
Right.
Okay, not the MMA boxing where you do the dirty clinches and everything like that, and maybe sneaker elbow. No, they actually do boxing, and I think this is going to be the next evolution here.
Well, I'm excited to see what comes next. Of course, you had sitting cage side or ringside. I'm an MMA guy. So sitting ringside was Junior Dos Santos, Jorge Masvidal, and Donald Trump, President Donald Trump, and his son Donald Trump Jr., all providing color commentary during the fights. And Jorge Masvidal was like, "Hey, I would step in and fight the Paul brothers." Of course, Junior Dos Santos is a little bit too big for them, but all of these are strikers. Like Junior Dos Santos is a boxer,
and a very good boxer,
It's just one of those things where you have to be more than a boxer to succeed in MMA,
Yes.
But I think that we're starting to see the prototype of a legitimate crossover from MMA to boxing, and it's Anderson Silva and the people who are styled after him. Because Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., who he beat before he beat Tito Ortiz, people were thinking that Chavez Jr. was actually gonna beat Anderson Silva. And Anderson Silva put on a clinic, and it's like, oh, wait, maybe these MMA guys aren't the pushovers that we've seen.
And it also, not only that, but we also are realizing that Jake Paul was being smart and strategical about who he was challenging. Okay? Because he never, ever once challenged a striker. He always challenged wrestlers, grapplers. He'll challenge them in a heartbeat, but he never challenged a true striker. Even though Tyron was sitting there saying, "I'll knock him out," he does have knockout power, but he is a wrestler. Okay, he's a wrestler that has knockout power. He's not a boxer that can also wrestle.
Yeah. Well, that gets us to our main event of the evening. Vitor. We should call him Vitor. Vitor Belfort defeated Evander, the real deal Holyfield, via TKO in round number 1. Now, we could probably give this, it was an early stoppage. I think that probably Evander Holyfield could have made it through the end of round 1, maybe into round 2. But this fight, it was already, you could see that Vitor Belfort had too much power. He was too fast. Evander Holyfield, when he went through the ropes in the first round, he was like, what did I get myself into? I was not ready. Exactly. This guy is 58 years old. He had 2 weeks to train for this. This is not what we should have seen. And I applaud what was it, California State Athletic Commission for not sanctioning that
not
fight.
taking. Yeah,
Like,
they knew.
They knew.
They knew. But on top of that, 60 years, almost 60 years old. All right, Evander Holyfield. All right, let's put it out there. You looked phenomenal in your interviews. Your oratory skills needed some help, but we weren't going to talk about that. I mean,
Right.
you were doing drills with Mike Tyson. That's great, but once again, 2 weeks is not enough to handle TRT Vitor Belfort. Okay, because if you saw his body, it was as if his whole chassis had been replaced. Okay, he was back to TRT. Okay, so I already knew when I saw the pictures of Vitor, I was like, oh, Evander's in trouble. And the Vitor I saw was the same Vitor that I saw years ago when he was young, like he was 19 years old in UFC, and he just swarmed the dude and beat him in like 19 seconds. That is what I saw there at a slower pace, and it was just like, okay, it is what it is. Once you're on the TRT, you get a little aggressive. Okay, you eat a little bit more steak in your diet. You eat a little bit more. It's a little rarer than usual because you have that taste for that meat, and we get that. All right, but yeah, Evander, Masters division, and even then, I think you're too old for the Masters division if you're hitting 60. Okay, yeah, I got you. I'm drinking. All right, yeah, Masters division. Older people, if you're over the age of 40 and you still want to fight because you don't know when to walk away.
If you're over the age of 40 and you don't have a number by your name, you need to just stop.
Let it go.
And there needs to be a single digit number. If you don't have a single digit number and you are over the age of 40, you need to start thinking, because you might get someone who's hanging around 14, 15, 13. Like, you're not going to make a run at the title. Sorry.
Okay.
If you don't have a single digit by your name, you're not going to make a run.
Unless your name is Yoel Romero, and then we leave you alone, okay? Because Yoel looks better than most 30, 20-year-olds.
Yeah.
Most high school football players, he looks better than them,
Yeah. So apparently we got some viewers out here who's making comments. So let's get into it.
All right. So, hello, everybody.
A person, Kalechi Onyebuchi says, blame the commissions. Blame the commissions that sanction. Well, the California State Athletic Commission did not want to sanction it. They didn't sanction it. They moved the fight to Florida because they knew that Florida was going to sanction it. Hell, that's the place where Florida man lives. You know that anything goes in Florida. Like
Charlemagne yeah. Go ahead.
I was gonna say Las Vegas takes its notes from Florida.
like Charlemagne the God said, the craziest people, they either live in Brooklyn or all in Florida. Okay,
there it is.
That's true. All right, just look at the current news and how Florida's keeping it real down there, crazy.
Yeah,
right?
So we knew that Florida was going to sanction it. They had already planned that if they couldn't get the sanctioning body to give Evander Holyfield permission to fight, they were going to move it to Florida because they knew that Florida was going to let them do it. So, at that point, blame the promoter for putting a 58, almost 59-year-old fighter who hadn't fought in, what was it?
20 years?
20 years, something like that. He hadn't fought in a very long time, decades. So it's kind of one of those things where it's like, you don't do that. You reschedule the fight, let him train if you're going to let him train, but I even think that the Oscar De La Hoya thing was a bad idea. I think Oscar De La Hoya, after watching that fight, should be like, man, kind of glad I got COVID. I said it. Yeah, I did say it.
Oh man, no love in this house tonight.
So it's just one of those things where Vitor Belfort, I think, and I'll have to quote the former president Donald Trump, who said, Vitor Belfort, your stock was high, but now it's even higher. And I think that he's right about that, because now Vitor Belfort could say, look, I took out Evander Holyfield. I want Jake Paul. I want Logan Paul. I'll even take Canelo. Find somebody to stop me. I think if Vitor Belfort can find another fighter, another boxer, and put them down in the dirt like he did Evander Holyfield, I think he will be hard pressed not to get the attention of somebody who can make him tens of millions of dollars.
Okay. And just to tell you, last fight Evander Holyfield had before this one was back in 2011 when he was 48 years old, and he won. He won that fight.
10 years, but it was by decision.
No, I didn't check. I'm sorry. And another thing, just another side note, that whole attitude that Vitor has. You want to know why he has an attitude like that? That never say die. That I'm going.
Oh
to die
my gosh! Here we go.
Black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu under Carlson Gracie.
Oh, it's that Gracie. It's that Gracie mentality. You know,
Really?
we're gonna get into signing death waivers in a moment. By the way, so stick with us. So
yes,
all in, it was a really crazy night for Triller Fight Club. Legends 2. The fights were so short. You can watch the entire fights on the highlights. Like YouTube. I just found the highlights super easy because the fights were so short. I would say that Evander Holyfield, I think he was going to lose that fight. He did not have the speed and the power that Vitor Belfort had. You know, I think that Anderson Silva putting Tito Ortiz, both of those guys, they're both calling out the Paul brothers. They're both calling out people who can make them big fights. I think that Anderson Silva or Vitor Belfort, they're probably not going to get any of the Pauls to call them because they looked phenomenal, and I don't think either one of them wants any of that smoke. But I think that one more fight for Anderson Silva, and he's going to get a big-name boxer that wants to fight him. I think one more good fight for Vitor Belfort, and he's going to find someone who wants to fight him. So this is, you know how we had all of our MMA hopes. The great MMA hope, if you will, was Tyron Woodley, and he let us down. I think we got two more people that we can now say MMA can stand with boxing. MMA can make their way into boxing, and I feel like Vitor Belfort and Anderson Silva are our two latest opportunities to be able to claim superiority over boxing. I'm going to say it. I'm an MMA fan.
I'm with that. Remember, you can bring an MMA fighter to boxing, but a boxer cannot make it in MMA. Remember that. That is the ultimate rule. Okay.
Except Clarissa Shields.
Yeah. Hey. We'll see. She won her first. Okay. Let's see. And exception, not rule. You know, James Toney comes to mind. Okay.
James Toney he was a skid mark on the octagon floor.
Yeah, man.
It was quick.
In more ways than one, bro.
but Clarissa Shields, before everybody jumps out and be like, "What about Clarissa Shields? She's a boxer. She's in the PFL." Yes, it's true. But until she's able to come and she's able to make that crossover and win the PFL, I don't think that we can. You need more than just Clarissa Shields to be.
Yeah, you definitely need more than Clarissa Shields.
So Michael Bisping, Kalechi's asking, what about Michael Bisping? Michael Bisping, I guess, being a boxer, he
was a kickboxer before
he was a kickboxer, and yes. This is again what we're getting here too is another name, Holly Holm. And without an ES, Holly Holm was a boxer and kickboxer. So a lot of her championships came in kickboxing. And so when you are a kickboxer, you are no longer a boxer. Boxing and kickboxing, very different. And so once you become a kickboxer, and we were even, I will tell you can go back to the shows around when Holly Holm first made it into MMA. You can go back to listen to the shows when Holly Holm was getting ready to fight Ronda Rousey. I was like, I am not convinced that she's got the well-rounded skill set to be able to have a lot of success in MMA. And I was wrong because she head kicked Ronda Rousey, and we found out how limited Ronda Rousey's striking was. But at the end of the day, how many title defenses did Holly Holm have?
2. 1.
One,
Yeah.
she lost that title defense to a wrestler.
Hmm.
And she's been
So
chasing it ever since.
Well, it shows that women's MMA is still in its infancy, I'll say infancy compared to how UFC was back in the day, where their style differentials were so very that a striker versus grappler. We saw that in the middle ages of the UFC, like sort of between the Zuffa transfer from when the Dana White era, the beginning of
the Dana White era. That's where the grapplers and the wrestlers kind of took over, and you had the Matt Hughes of the worlds and the GSPs,
the Mark Colemans, the Carlos Newtons, and those guys, where their styles were still very much differentiated. That you could tell a wrestler from a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, from a kickboxer to a Muay Thai guy to a boxer, to a karate guy. You could see the difference. Nowadays in the men's side of MMA, you can't really tell that. It's actually a rarity when you see a guy that specializes just in one form. Right. Whereas, and be successful. Whereas you see now, it's more mixed in. The women's MMA is coming along just nicely. It's coming along just as nicely, but right now they're still kind of separated, where you could tell the kickboxers from the wrestlers, from the jiu-jitsu artists. You still see those people, and don't worry, it's gonna get to that point where it's all gonna be mixed in well, and they'll be able to hit the ground and grapple. They'll stand up and strike.
That's right. That's right. So that's it. Let's go ahead and close the book on this one and put this one on the shelf. Triller Fight Club Legends 2 is history. Now let's go into the headlines that are making waves in the MMA world, and this is Finding the Angle.
Headline. Finally.
All right, this is Finding the Angles. This is where we talk about the things that are making waves in the MMA world. So what happened is I'm looking at the wrong transition, and so I'm like scrolling through through overlays, and I'm looking for transition. So that's why it took so long. I'm like, wait, where's my transition? Looking in the wrong screen. So that's what took me so long. But this is the Finding the Angles. This is where we talk about the headlines that are making waves in the UFC and MMA world. The number one thing I want to talk about is the headliner. All right, the headliner is this. WWE signs Olympic gold medalist Gable Steveson to a multi-year contract. Dude's made a decision. He's going to the squared circle.
Oh, he wants to make him a bag of cash, and I ain't mad at him.
Not mad at him at
all.
all.
Not mad at him at all. Right.
So
this is what Brock did. This is what Kurt Angle did. Okay. Right. This is what Ken Patera did. All right. All those guys were former Olympians. Well, I'm sorry, with the exception of Brock Lesnar. Brock Lesnar just had pretty much a perfect wrestling record in NCAA. That he just transitioned over. There's nothing wrong with that. Good job, Gable. Ain't mad at you. We'll see you in the UFC when the time comes.
I question whether or not we will see him in the UFC, but I do think that it's one of those things where it's the right decision to make, because he can start making big dollars very quickly in WWE. He's got the pedigree. He's got the size. I haven't heard him speak too much on whether or not he can promo very well, but because he has that pedigree of a wrestler and a gold medalist, the WWE is going to invest in making sure that he can promo. They're going to make sure that he's going to be able to make the bumps and make the moves look good. I think he is going to be that next monster. I don't know what you call it. You may have to educate me on the actual wrestling terms. But you got that
big thing.
You've got that class of wrestler that is just basically unstoppable. Your Goldbergs, your Undertakers, your Kanes, your Roman Reigns, all of these guys, your Triple H's, who can sit there and just be unstoppable, and they don't have to sell the punches or anything like that. They can just
Well, see, with all those guys, though, at the guys that you said, well, Roman Reigns is what you consider a blue chipper. That means he comes from a family, a pedigree that's so good that he's almost a shoe-in to do whatever. Okay, and he comes from the same family that The Rock came from. That's
Right.
they are real life cousins. Matter of fact, The Rock, the Usos, Rikishi, all of them are all family. If they're Samoan, they're family. Nia Jax, Tamina. They're all family. At some level, Tamina is actually a distant cousin, even though she is the daughter of Jimmy Superfly Snuka. Snuka is actually a distant cousin from the Inoue family. So there's that. So yeah. I mean, with Gable, I think Kurt Angle is still with the WWE. If he is, that's
I think
fantastic.
he may have transitioned to AEW.
I think he may have transitioned over to AEW or TNA. He might have, or he might have retired. Even then, okay, he's got plenty of wrestlers there that have been there, done that. The development program for the WWE is phenomenal. As we can tell that, we see a lot of good talent coming out of there. They're also a lot more crisp and more technical than a lot of the other promotions. I've recently have gotten back into watching wrestling again, and I can see, you can definitely see how the programming and the storyline of the WWE is not as good when it comes to technical wrestling, with the exception of one, Nia Jax. The fact they do a lot, their work is a lot more crisp than saying some of the other promotions. The other promotions just tend to be, a little bit more maverick in what they do, and I applaud them for doing that. But they just need to clean up their work just a little bit.
I think Kurt Angle went to Impact, right? TNA, which became Impact.
TNA Impact. He did go to TNA Impact for several years, and I thought I saw him go to AEW for a little bit, but I thought he came back to WWE.
He may have.
I could be wrong.
Because a lot of times people will, it becomes business after a while. After you get to a certain level in wrestling, then it becomes business, and Vince McMahon doesn't try to blackball you and ruin your career. Does he still, even after? Yes. Okay,
yes.
Well, you know better than me, yes. So but the fact is, I think that maybe Kurt Angle came back so that he could retire a WWE.
Yeah, because now for a lot of those old wrestlers now, it's about the Hall of Fame. Okay, that's the whole Ultimate Warrior thing right there. Him coming back for a couple of shows and then to the Hall. It was about the Hall of Fame. All right, that's that. And I once again, it's a business thing. I mean, I'm not saying, Vince McMahon is good or bad. He's bad. And, with Triple H being there, being a stooge. And, it's like, it's going to be business. I think Kurt Angle should come back. If he gets a chance to even train the kid. Because there's in my opinion, there was no more successful Olympic wrestler turned pro wrestler than Kurt Angle. He would be the best. Like I said, any man that could wrestle, win gold, and have a broke neck and still went to wrestle, okay, he's good in my book.
Yeah. Either way, I think Kurt Angle's retired. I checked all three of those wrestling promotions, and his name's not listed. So maybe he's on the back office now. But, all in, here's the deal. This is the catcher. So for those of you who've kind of stuck with us while we kind of go through this whole WWE thing, he chose WWE because Dana White wasn't willing to make the investment in Gable Steveson. Because, and I'll be honest with you, it kind of makes sense. So stick with me here.
All right.
Dana White wanted to put Gable Steveson on Dana White Tuesday Contender Series.
Okay.
And he wanted to have Gable fight in some regional promotions before bringing him to the big time. Because at the end of the day, being a freestyle wrestler is great. Being a gold medal freestyle wrestler is great. But there are things that you have to learn about MMA because you can't just be a wrestler today.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no way for Gable Steveson to learn that once you walk into the octagon.
Right. This is not learning on the fly.
No,
It's
this
absolutely not.
is real. This is the real deal. And so when you're Gable Steveson, you're a gold medalist. You're not going to want to start with tomato cans. You're not going to want to start on the extra early prelims. You're not going to want to be. You want to be main card dude, and it only takes one embarrassing fight. Think about how bad it was for Brock Lesnar when he first got into the UFC. Who was his first fight? Do you remember who it was?
Yes, I remember who it was. It was Frank Mir.
Frank Mir got him in a heel hook in like 30 seconds, and then he got Brock Lesnar tapping out. And then what did Brock Lesnar do? Yeah.
He got mad. Okay, that's what he did. He got mad and really began seriously training. Okay.
Yeah.
And then he came back and became a monster in the ring. Okay, like he was supposed to be. But let's put it out there. Brock Lesnar is such a freak of nature. Okay, he is a genetic freak of nature. His hands, the gloves that they put on his hands, they had to be specially made. They were like triple or quadruple XL. Okay, when to wrap around his face. When he hit people, he was turning them into hamburger meat. All right, just seriously. You can just look at the results of every one of his fights, and they didn't look right after the fight. None of them looked right. They looked like they have seen war, like real war, and it was just a regular match with this man. So Brock Lesnar, he was built for this. Okay, and you know, unfortunately, he had the illness, the diverticulitis. I'm butchering the name.
That's correct.
And it was bad. He almost killed himself. But let's put it out on a side note. He still fought like 3 matches while he was going through that.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, if he had stayed in, he'd still be champion right now, in my opinion.
Right. And so that just goes to show that, like, Brock Lesnar, freak of nature that he is, he was able to bounce back. And what did they do? They gave him right after Frank Mir, and it was a knee bar, by the way, not a heel hook, a knee bar. Yeah, then they gave him Heath Herring. Heath Herring was on his way down at that point. After that, they gave him Randy Couture, and Randy Couture was the champion at the time. But remember, Randy Couture was a light heavyweight, and he had just beaten Tim the Maniac Silva, because Tim Sylvia didn't know how to do anything but throw punches. Once he got grappled on the side of the cage and foot stomped like Randy Couture used to do, there was nothing that Tim Sylvia could do. And so right after that, I don't think Randy Couture
he never fought again. No, he never fought again at heavyweight. He fought one more time against I think it was Lyoto Machida at that point. And that he lost against Lyoto Machida with the crane kick.
Right. And that knocked the teeth out of his mouth. But
then he went to the Expendables. Yeah,
I'm trying to go back and see when he actually fought. So he fought Tim Sylvia. I'm trying to go back and see when he actually fought and won the title, and how long he had the title before before Brock Lesnar came in and just wrecked him.
But see, we gotta understand the thing about Brock Lesnar at his time in the UFC. He came in at a time where the heavyweight division wasn't truly developed.
Right.
It was very bare. It was just very big dudes that couldn't make light heavyweight going in there and punching each other out. That's what it was. A lot of big meat in there. All right. So with that said, he came in. We had this guy at 106-5 in NCAA Division I wrestling, going in here with a bunch of guys that just punched.
Right.
So yeah, he wrecked everybody that came through. I mean, and then he faced Cain Velasquez, who also could wrestle, but like I said, he was going through a illness, and he lost. I mean, we can sit here and speculate what Brock Lesnar would have done had he came back after he got over that. But the WWF said, here's this whole F-150 truck bed full of cash. Can we bring you back to the ring? And Brock Lesnar was like, yeah, you can.
But that's the thing. Once again, we're kind of talking around it. But if you're thinking about Dana White and you know that Gable Stevenson's going to command a big wad of cash because you're competing against WWE, WWE does not need him to be an elite fighter. They just need him to be able to sell a punch and cut a great promo.
Well, yeah, okay.
I'm just saying they need him to know the wrestling moves, and they need him to cut a great promo. That's what pro wrestlers do, right? At the end of the day, you're going to oversimplify the job of a pro wrestler. It's to sell the fight when you're in the ring. You got to know the moves. It's got to look convincing, and you got to cut a promo. You got to be good on the mic.
Yeah, and like I said, it depends on who they partner them up with, who they train with. Because we know if he went to the UFC, that more than likely Daniel Cormier would have got a hold of him, or Ben Askren would have got a hold of him, and they would have trained him. All right, he wouldn't have went to American Top. I would like to say that more than likely he probably would have went to AKA because Daniel Cormier was really chomping at the bit to see him in.
But no, I disagree with you. Daniel Cormier said that he needs to go. What I saw Daniel Cormier say is that Daniel Cormier said Gable Steveson needs to go to WWE, let them get his body on point, transform him from a wrestler to just a monster, and then come back to MMA. But here's the deal, and this is what I've been trying to build up to.
Okay.
The advantage that Brock Lesnar had over heavyweights when Brock Lesnar came in doesn't exist anymore.
No,
I would argue that Brock
not.
Lesnar would not have the success that he had back then at UFC 100 that he had than he would have today because of the fact that the heavyweights are bigger. They have invested in learning how to wrestle or at least defend the takedown. And if Gable Steveson isn't a striker and doesn't develop those striking skills and waits and doesn't, it goes right into these main events where he's fighting, people like, even something like Curtis Blades.
Yes. So what are you saying, Ryan, is did Brock Lesnar evolve the division in a short time there?
I think that between him and Cain Velasquez, the division evolved because what came after Cain Velasquez is Daniel Cormier. And Daniel Cormier, being the elite wrestler that he was, his dominance waned very fast.
Mm-hmm. Because the next evolution was waiting for him.
That's right. So I think Dana White's like, listen, Gable, I know that you're an Olympic gold medalist, but I need you to take some of these fights in these regional promotions. I need you to fight these contender series guys. Get a name for yourself in MMA and learn how to do these other things. Being an Olympic gold medalist in freestyle wrestling affords you a lot of advantages, flattens that learning curve. But at the end of the day, how's your jiu-jitsu?
Yeah.
Can you get yourself out of a rear naked choke? Do you know how to defend against the guillotine when you go for a takedown? Because if you don't, you're going to get embarrassed. And all of this money that we've invested in hyping you up is going to be wasted.
Yeah. I mean, we're not okay, so let it be said. I for one am not knocking Dana for saying you need to start down here before you get up here. I am not mad at him for that. That's actually a very smart decision. And it's one of those rare cases where Dana, did the right thing by saying, we'll let you in, but you ain't starting at the top. You're gonna be starting down there. You need to learn how to throw a punch. You need to learn how to take a punch. You need to learn how to, we need to see how your takedown defense against jiu-jitsu is. We need to know when you can recognize what's gonna happen if a guy's gonna throw a kick or shoot a takedown. Good job, Dana. And long story short, good job, Dana.
Right. And that brings me to the next point. And the next point goes to our revisit of the oblique kick. Because this is something, too, that you have to start thinking about. There's no oblique kick, no intentional oblique kick in the WWE. But what we've seen now is the destruction that a well-placed oblique kick can do to a knee. And so, Khalil Roundtree, who, we talked about a few weeks ago, threw this devastating oblique kick, which is basically a stomp to the knee or to the side of the knee. And its objective is, and we'll talk a little bit about this because we got a doctor who weighed in on what actually happens. It basically rips those tendons and tears those ligaments to shreds whenever it's landed properly. And so Khalil Roundtree took a lot of heat. People were mad. And so it was nice that his opponent weighed in and said, listen, it was my job to defend it. I knew that was a possibility to be a strike. I didn't defend it. It was a legal strike. Let that man enjoy his victory. I think that's very nice of Bukauskas to at least say, hey, listen, get off Khalil Roundtree Jr.'s back. But at the end of the day, I would love to have him say, I think that we should probably make this illegal.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Because then, all right, we know what it's supposed to do. Okay, we know the full term effects of it now. Okay, we've seen an opponent actually throw a technique at in the what's the word, in the worst case scenario, because John Jones has used this technique and we've seen it and we're like, well, there's potential to do damage, and if he did it this way, we actually saw what it can do, and it's devastating. However, you start banning one technique, we got to start going through the laundry list and start banning a lot of techniques, and next thing you know, we're back to Western kickboxing or boxing itself.
Yeah, and so this is the argument you made 2 shows ago, and I thought that we had gotten you to move over to perhaps this is one of those strikes that should be illegal, because this, what George and I both said was, this is a strike that doesn't end fights. This is a strike that ends careers.
Right.
And so,
every strike,
you get head kicked, that ends the fight, but people who've gotten head kicked, they come back and fight 6 months. They get a 6-month, suspension, and then they're back fighting later that year. Bukauskas is not going to be fighting later this year. Bukauskas may be out for an entire year, and if his surgery doesn't go right, if there are more complications like we've seen with people like Dominic Cruz, he could be out for 2 years due to one strike. Mm-hmm. And think about the evolution of the sport. What?
All right. Well, this is one of those things that, once again, they know the risks of doing this job. They know, these fighters know that kick is out there. Okay, and if they better learn how to start, if anything, if there's ever been a notice of you better learn how to defend this kick, now we have that notice. All right.
Well, you know who agrees with you? Dan Hardy. Dan Hardy. The outlaw.
Hardy, the man that forgot to know how to tap to a Kimura. Dan Hardy, the man who literally almost lost his whole right arm. And it's going to be called the one arm bandit outlaw.
Yep.
Dan Hardy.
Yes. And he said that, that fighters sign a death waiver when competing. He says it shouldn't be banned. It's an effective technique. If we start banning effective techniques, then we'll find ourselves in a very, very limited rule set. This is basically your argument, right? I think we need to recognize that if it's an occupational hazard. I feel like getting head kicked and having headaches for weeks after you get a head kick is an occupation. I think, having stitches and scar tissue is an occupational hazard. But, it's like, at the end of the day, this goes a bit beyond occupational hazard. Because here's the thing, if we don't make this strike illegal, then now if I was a fighter, I'm learning how to land it the way Khalil Roundtree landed it. I want to take a leg. How do you defend against it?
Okay, so there's going to be 2 camps of when it comes to this. There's going to be those that are going to be like, oh man, I'm gonna take a leg home tonight and learn that technique effectively. And then there's going to be those that'll be like, I learned this. I need to learn how to defend it, and I don't ever want to use this because I know what it can do. There's those that are going to be very responsible with this, with knowing it, and then there's those that's like, man, I'm trying to win and try to get a check.
Yeah, but it goes. Dan Hardy goes and says, name 3 people that what happened to Modestas Bukauskas that it's happened to. It's like, well, okay, I can't name 3 people that I know that it's happened to. I've only seen it this vicious once.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
But I know that people have had their legs hyperextended. I know that the strike has landed a lot, and it's changed the way people were, there's people's stances and things like that because of hyperextensions that you can fight through. But it becomes one of those things that it's severely limiting. Now, if only we were doing hyperextensions and it was something you could fight through, it's kind of like it would fall into that classification of your calf kick, where the calf kick it changes the way you have to fight, but at the end of the day, you recover from it. But once you start getting into some of these strikes, and he's talking about knees to the head, it's like, well, now we understand the destructive power that a well-placed knee to the head could have, which is why it's illegal in the UFC.
Right. But not illegal in most other promotions.
Well, yeah, soccer kicks used to be legal in other promotions, right? And it becomes one of those things where it's like, yeah, it's a legal strike, but at the end of the day, the damage that a soccer kick could have to the human brain.
Oh yeah, but
why would we make?
No, go ahead.
Why would we have to wait until someone is either killed or irrevocably, I can't even say the word, damaged before we say, maybe that strike hits a bit harder than what we thought?
Because, all right, if you ban it before there's legitimate arguments or legitimate data or legitimate footage of it doing super destructive, a super destructive effect to someone, people will always say that technique should not be banned. Okay. To this day, the 12-6 elbow is like one of the while the 12-6 elbow, in my opinion, is one of the most ineffective techniques to strike with. Okay. A 3-6 is more effective. All right. And they still use that in the UFC. A 12-6 was banned because somebody saw Andy Hoog, who is perhaps one of the greatest kickboxers ever to do it, sat there and did a 12-6 elbow and broke some ice. All right. And they sat there, it's like, oh my God, maybe we shouldn't do that. No, you shouldn't do a 3-6 elbow. A 3-6 elbow, you might as well take a hammer and hit them on the side of the head with. All right. A 12-6 doesn't generate as much power than a 3-6.
Right.
But we still have it in UFC.
But there's science behind some of these other things. The reason why the 12-6 elbow, which is an elbow that goes from 12 o'clock to 6, straight down, is illegal is because of the fact that MMA could not get sanctioned in key states because of a political senator who would not allow the MMA to be legitimized while that strike was still legal. So it's not a physician who says that this strike should be illegal. It's not tremendous evidence of damage to the to people that says that this is a political reason why the 12-6 elbow is illegal. Now, when you get to oblique kick, now we can bring in doctors, and so one of them is Dr. David Abbasi, who is I believe he's a ringside physician, and he's actually talking about what happens to the to the knee when it gets hit in the way that the oblique kick it lands, and he's ultimately saying that if you have those, it can affect your ACL, it can affect your MCL, it can affect other parts of the knee, the medial meniscus. He says it can actually rip the back of the capsule or the lining of the knee joint.
No, it's doing the damage.
Yeah,
However,
it's tremendous amounts of damage. But at the end of the day, that's a strike. It's not even a submission where you can tap out of that. If someone's got you in a knee bar and it could potentially do some tremendous amounts of damage, if you do not tap out of it, then you allowed that to happen. There's no way for me to tap out of an oblique kick. You just blow my knee up and there's nothing else I can do about it.
Right. You got to learn to defend it. All right. So once again, you said the reason why that technique is going to stay. It's because it's going to be political opinion. It's going to be the opinion of the people. We saw one heinous act with this technique. Wait till it's about 3 or 4 if it becomes a consistent basis. And then people are going to be like, hold on, why are we still doing this technique? And then that technique will start being questioned. But until then,
it blows my mind, John. It blows my mind.
But that's how it is. Don't you get it? That it's all about the opinion. That's all it is. It's all about opinion. Ultimately, when we look at the whole grand scheme of all the techniques that have ever been used in MMA, it is all about the opinion on the devastation of that technique onto another person's body. If we don't see it, if a person is punched to death but does not bleed and dies later, nobody's going to question the punches that got him there. They're going to question why, his death and how he had all these other conditions before he got punched to death. Okay, but he didn't bleed. So how really bad was it? Because we are right now in a phase, I guess, in a phase where we're still trying to relearn things. We're trying to educate ourselves on things, on how things are, and how devastating that simple trauma can be on a human body. I mean, perfect example, the 22 bullet. You know, the 22, it bounces off a bone, right? If you shoot somebody with a 22, it can literally bounce off the bone. They never talk about where it ends up. It could end up anywhere in your body. It can be the most dangerous caliber because while it deflects off a bone, it could shoot up into your heart, kill you right there. But people still say it's a worthless pistol. It's not. Okay, it's probably the most dangerous because at least it's just like with anything. If I hit you in the head with a bat, okay, and you don't bleed, you just got a big old hematoma that's like this big. While it's great for TikTok and Instagram and Facebook, I could have killed if you pop that hematoma improperly, you're gonna die.
So let me just go back to this real quick. If I've got a 45 and you got a 22, you're gonna feel confident.
If you have a 45 and I got a 22, will I feel confident?
And we're shooting at each other. You're going to feel confident. I was like, it's probably the most dangerous caliber. I'm like, no, there's like, I can't go with you there. Like, there's science that shows the bigger the caliber, the more deadly it is. But, it's.
But think about this.
I get your point, though. I do get your point.
I can put more bullets in you than with a 45. You got the weight, the power that's coming behind it. And yes, while one bullet is all it takes for me, I got a whole clip of 22s, and that I'm constantly done. I have no type of recoil factor when it comes to a 22 to your 44. So while you got that one through me, I got about 6 in you, and there's a dice roll on where those bullets are. They're going to be sitting in the ER for hours like, where is it? And they're like, oh, here it is. Here's one in the spleen. Oh, there's one in his sphincter. And they're going to pull that out. And then there's one in your toe. They're like, oh, my God, how did it get way down here to the toe? Oh, it deflected off his knee bone. He should have got hit with an oblique kick. And,
but I may spend hours in the emergency room while they're searching for bullets. You're going to spend hours in the morgue because there's a big hole where the 45 went through.
Hey, I'm just saying. I'm not saying I'm confident with it. I'm just saying that if I had a 22, I'm going to you may put one in me, but they're going to have a heck of a time trying to find what I put in you. Okay, that's all.
I may be walking around with lead for the rest of my life.
Yes, you're going to be walking around like an old Wild West person, okay?
That's right.
You going to walk through the airport, they're going to be like, nah, sir, you got to step back. And you will think of me. Even though I'm in the taking a mighty dirt nap and I'm in the sky, you're gonna be like, darn, every time that metal detector goes off, you're gonna be like, keys. And that's
well,
that's
what's so last point on this. In 2020, the Athletic, it's a publication, performed an MMA fighter survey of the 170 professional fighters who were polled on banning the oblique kick. 68.2% said that the technique should remain legal.
Okay, so with that said, as we live in a democracy, 68% of the people said, "You know what, man? Let it go, let it fly." That's the end of the story. And this is coming from the fighters themselves, the people who will take these techniques more than anybody else in the world. All right, they're gonna get hit with them first. So if they are good with it, we're good with it.
Well, there are a lot of quotes that say that just because you are with the majority doesn't necessarily mean. And I would question whether or not, if they did the survey again right after the Modestas Bukauskas fight, if that number would be that. I don't think so.
I think this is one story that we really need to watch.
Revisit. Yeah.
Revisit. We'll definitely revisit this.
100%. I think we're going to see more.
I'm pretty sure now that we've seen the effectiveness of it, we're definitely going to see more. Okay, I guarantee it. Because when John Jones started using the oblique kick, fighters slowly but surely started incorporating that into their technique. Now that we've seen the full devastation of said oblique kick, we're gonna see even more fighters put in there. All right, yep. Don't watch this space.
We may end up starting a new combat sport with basically just looking oblique for kick. How to set up the oblique kick. Because I can imagine. I know that we were trying to end this segment, but I could just imagine John Jones coming back heavyweight. First thing he does, rips a knee with the oblique kick. So now,
or the irony, he gets blasted with an oblique
ripped.
Kick.
Yeah, he gets ripped.
And he gets took down.
Yeah, I think the fear is that we are going to see our great headliners and best fighters go down with oblique kicks from people who they should just destroy. But it's going to be one of those things. Yeah, I mean, ultimately, it is a thing, but I think that's what's going to end up causing that to get ruled illegal. Is wait till an Izzy Adesanya gets his knee blown out by an oblique kick, or John Jones.
That's exactly right.
Or Connor. Let a Connor get his knee blown.
Hold on, we saw Connor's is God now. I mean, he if anything, he broke his leg. Yeah, they haven't stopped calf kicks yet.
Well, yeah, it's still considered a freak accident right now. So
three times, twice in 3 times that's happened, and then they happened twice in 2 weeks.
No, it wasn't 2 weeks, but it was a checked kick though, right? Mm-hmm. So your leg kick is a leg kick, right? If you check the leg kick, that could happen. It's a freak accident. They're not going to make throwing leg kicks illegal, and definitely not going to make checking leg kicks illegal. So this falls into that freak accident category, because you have to start thinking about how many leg kicks get thrown in MMA. This is almost like the whole airplane, traveling by air, right? It's kind of one of those things where traveling by air is the safest way of travel, even though when a plane crashes, it's almost always fatal, right? So It's just that there are so many planes in the air, so many planes flying at any given time, that it way outweighs the number of times that you get these fatalities. Whereas driving, you get fatalities all the time, even though there are many, many more cars in the on the road than there are planes in the sky. Same thing with this, is that there are so many leg kicks that are thrown, so many calf kicks that are thrown in every single round of every single match in the MMA world, that these broken legs pale in comparison to the number of times a leg could have been broken. When we start looking at the oblique kick, though, I think that the number is way smaller, And so the damage that happens when one of these things happen, it's more statistically significant. To your point, not enough have happened to make it where a Dana White or the ABC, the Association of Boxing Commissions or whatever, ABC, some of the state athletic commissions have to start thinking about whether or not to make the oblique kick illegal. Not enough knees have been blown out the way Bukowski's has. So it's going to stay legal for a time, but I just fear that some of our best and favorite fighters are going to go down to an oblique kick, and it's going to take one of them stepping up and saying, I was an unstoppable force until I got my knee stomped, and now my career is over. That's when I think it'll change. Speaking of injuries, Jermaine Durandamy is out of her fight against Irina Aldana at UFC 268. She suffered an undisclosed injury and had to withdraw from the fight. No one's talking about what it is, but we know that she had surgery on a broken left hand and needed time to recuperate, which is why this fight waited for so long to happen. So maybe she re-injured her hand, or maybe
possible.
Jermaine Durandamy is kind of on the older side of a fighting career. I look forward to seeing her fight again because I love the fact that she's just such a big woman and powerful and athletic. I think that she really had Amanda Nunes in a bad spot until Amanda Nunes took her down. So, you don't agree with me?
Okay. Yeah, I agree with you. I agree. I heard what you said, and when you say a bigger woman, I was like, she's no Gabby Garcia. That's all
she's
I
not.
gotta say.
Gabby Garcia is like bigger than me.
Yes, she's monstrous.
Yeah,
and
she's not Gabby Garcia, but for a 145-pound featherweight, she is a big featherweight. I think she may even fight she may actually fight at bantamweight.
I think she does.
I think she fights at bantamweight, and so she's got about a lightweight body fighting at bantamweight. So she's pretty amazing. I'm a big fan of Jermaine Durandamy.
I am too. I'm amazed at her technique. You're right. She is on the other side of her prime. She is on that the hill of the prime, if you will.
She's almost 40.
So yeah. So maybe it's about time she starts slowing down and say, you know what, I've done it. I've been there, done that.
Yeah, I'd love to see her fight for the title one more time. Speaking of fighting for a title, UFC 268. There is going to be a UFC debut of a very particular fighter. You ever heard of the name Alex Pereira?
Does sound familiar. It does.
For those of you out there who have never heard of the name Alex Pereira, have you ever heard of the name Israel Adesanya?
And and let's give you a little trivia. On Izzy's fight record, he has a loss in his fight career.
2 losses.
He has two losses. I'm sorry,
not counting Jan Blachowicz. He's got a couple of other ones too, but 2 very big losses.
One of those losses is to Alex Pereira.
2 of them.
Oh, is it both?
Yes. One of the times Alex Pereira knocked him out, and the second time Alex Pereira beat him, I believe, by decision. And so here you have it. You have Alex Pereira is now joining the UFC, taking his UFC debut at UFC 268. And if this man can do what he did in kickboxing and MMA, we might get to see Israel Adesanya, Alex Pereira 3.
Oh, wow.
That would be something.
Look at Dana White making these storylines.
Making moves.
Yeah. He is doing the evil fight promoter from Super Fighters back in the 90s. You seen that movie yet?
No, I have not. I don't watch.
You should watch that. Recommend. You should watch that movie, man. I recommend cheesy 90s martial arts movies for everybody, just so y'all can appreciate the things that Scott Adkins and Simu Liu, who in Shang-Chi, watch those things. Watch the martial arts that we have today, the martial art movies we have today, so you can appreciate them. But you gotta watch the cheesy martial art movies from the 90s to appreciate what we have today. I recommend that for anybody. Hey, find me at Keys to Victory on Instagram. Ask me, John, what are these cheesy 90s martial arts movies you're talking about? And I'll just show you a picture of my video library, and you'll know. You'll know.
Man, I don't want none of that. But
you want some of this, dude. You do.
But Alex Pereira definitely wants to show what he can do in the UFC, and I'm looking forward to that. But here's the thing. Just because it's the UFC doesn't mean that he is the best fighters. He's fighting the best fighters in the world, according to Ray Cooper Jr. From PFL. Because Ray Cooper the third says, just because you came from the UFC doesn't mean crap. And so you and I were talking about this. We were saying that, by and large, the best fighters in the world are in the UFC. That there are other promotions that have great fighters. Bellator has great, outstanding fighters. So does ONE FC. So does PFL. We're not knocking that these promotions don't have great fighters. What we're saying is that there are more of those higher caliber fighters in the UFC. This is not like, I use the Alabama example. It's not saying that Ohio State doesn't have great fighters, or great football players. Ohio State has outstanding football players. It's just that Alabama has more outstanding football players than any other school in the country. So while one school may have five-star athletes on their team, Alabama has 8 or 9.
Right. And that's what it is, because let's put it out there. For every Michael Jordan that we saw, there's about 20 or 30 that was on those street courts doing it better. All right. There's always, for as good as fighters that we see, there are 20 or 30 other fighters that we don't see that are just as good, if not more phenomenal. It's all about timing and hard work and courage. Okay. And
a little bit of luck.
And a little bit of luck too, because it's always about finding it. Because when you got your chance at the big screen, at the big times, are you ready? Because we see the fighters that were ready when the time was called. Okay, Those other 20 and 30 fighters, they probably weren't ready at the time. Okay, so it's just how it is. Nobody's saying that other promotions don't have the best fighters. Every promotion has phenomenal fighters. We've seen it. Okay, we have seen it from BKFC all the way to ONE. All right, we have seen the gamut of the fighters and the caliber that they do it. And let's put it out there. Even some of their worst fighters are still some of the best average fighters that we'll find out there, because they're at that top. Okay,
right.
Think about it. We see maybe a couple of hundred fighters every month. Okay, a couple of hundred. Think how many fighters there are beyond that. That you might want to 10 times, maybe 20 times that many fighters out there, and we're seeing the top couple of hundred every month. Right. Let that just sink in.
Right, but you see, and that goes to some of these other points that we were making. Is the fact that, Ray Cooper is like, hey, look, you had Anthony Pettis come to PFL, and he didn't make it. He didn't make it to the playoffs. You had Fabricio Verdum. He didn't make it to the playoffs. You had Rory McDonald, who got who got kicked out of the playoffs. He got beaten out of the playoffs. He's like, just because you're the UFC doesn't mean that you own this place. PFL's framework, which requires fighters to fight more often than they're normally fighting in the UFC, is hard for these fighters to adjust to. I get you. But at the end of the day, we start looking at some of these other UFC fighters that have gone on, and like Brandon the Truth Vera. That dude left the UFC long years ago, became one heavyweight champion, and only recently got beaten. Ryan Bader in Bellator. That dude was the light heavyweight champion and the heavyweight champion. Gregor Masasi, he's the current Bellator middleweight champion. So you start looking at all of these other fighters. Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson won the flyweight Grand Prix and fought for the title, got beaten, but he won the flyweight Grand Prix.
Yeah.
So we start seeing that these are fighters that the UFC allowed to leave. These aren't the fighters that are still competing at the number 5, number 4, number 3, number 2 levels in the UFC. So when we start saying like, oh, well, the fighters that the UFC have cut aren't as good as the UFC, as people make the UFC out to be, it's like you're looking at people who weren't able to make it in the UFC. And I'm not saying not making it like you're not good. It's just the fact that your path to the title got dim.
Yeah. The evolution of the UFC has went on, and you're not there. That's what they're basically saying. Nothing against any fighter that gets cut from the UFC, but the way that the UFC is evolving is not. You're not on the same path, and you may have a chance at the other promotions and see where their evolution is at. We're not saying that you're gonna make it there either. Okay, but what we're saying is you probably have a better chance there. What the UFC is brimming off their top is some of the top cream in some other promotions sometimes.
It's the cream of the cream, right? Like, yeah, that's the thing. And so, to Ray Cooper, I would say this. I would say do not measure the quality of fighter in the UFC by the fighters you are fighting in your promotion who got cut from the UFC. You go to the UFC and win a UFC championship.
Yeah. I mean, Ray Cooper.
Once you get that UFC belt around your waist and you say, you know what, winning in PFL was much harder than winning this UFC belt that now I'll listen to you. But if you're measuring the quality of UFC fighters by the people that the UFC cut, I just don't think you've got the sample size and the right sample for the quality of the UFC fighter. And I know that we're coming off as homers. We're basically a UFC show. I get it. But I'm happy to argue with anybody that you've got the wrong sample size if you're looking at people who have left the UFC and gone other places and didn't have success. Benson Henderson being someone in Bellator who left the UFC and then got beat in his first 2 or 3 fights. Like that's yes, but Benson Henderson wasn't the champion, retired from the UFC and decided not to renew his contract and then went to Bellator and got beat. No, Benson was on his way out. UFC was like, we're not renewing you. We're not going to pay you money.
Yeah. Exactly. And I mean, don't know Ray Cooper from Adam, but I'm going to say it like this. That sounds kind of haterish when you're across the street looking into the Golden Courts. Okay. Saying, oh, anybody that leaves that place, they ain't no good. You haven't been there. Okay. Go there and experience it, then come back and talk about it.
Right.
Until then, you're coming off like you're being a hater. All right. And I'm not being a homer or a fanboy for the UFC. I'm not even trying to be like that. I'm just saying, how can you talk about someplace that you've never been? Okay. You can't do that. All right. Go there, work up. I mean, Michael Chandler, he's the best person to sit there and say it. Michael Chandler went from Bellator and he's in the UFC right now. If he wins the title and be like, you know what, man, I had more fun doing it in Bellator than anywhere else. We can't argue with that. We really can't argue with that, because then we have the data from not only from a fighter from the Bellator that went to the UFC and beat them, but we've also have several other fighters that are in Bellator right now that used to be in the UFC saying the same thing. Now we have somebody that went from Bellator to the UFC and said, hey, I have more fun over there at Bellator than here at UFC.
And we ain't heard it yet. What we heard Michael Chandler saying is Michael Chandler's like, Michael Chandler saying, like, I was great in Bellator, but I always wondered how I would fare in the UFC. And then he went, won his first fight in 2 minutes, and then what happened to him?
Yeah.
Defeated in the second round for the title against Charles Oliveira. Now, I think he's supposed to fight Justin Gaethje now? He loses to Justin Gaethje. What are you going to say then?
He's going to say this place is hard.
It's hard. I'm not saying that. Michael Chandler's an outstanding fighter. Michael Chandler is a great fighter. I love to watch him fight. No one chases down prey and then just eats them alive like Michael Chandler. But the fact is that the prey in the UFC they fight back.
too. Yeah, they apex too. Okay,
Yes.
you got to be the apex of the apex.
It's sharks eating sharks. You know, this is look. You might find it. I learned this recently, and I can't wait to use it since I'm wearing black and white. I'm gonna go ahead. The orca is actually the apex predator in the ocean, not the great white shark.
Yeah, because not even the great white messes with the orca.
Yeah, great white sharks are like, we don't mess with orcas. So you could be a great white shark, but there are orcas in the UFC. You gotta watch yourself.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and you want to know how hardcore the orcas are? Wait till you see how they do sea lions.
Yeah, knock them up in the air. Boo!
Yeah, exactly. They doing them like volleyballs. Okay, so when you see them doing it like that, then you say, okay, I'm in the wrong place.
So talking about people in wrong places or going places they've never been before, Daniel Cormier is actually been signed to a Hollywood contract. We're going to see his acting chops. He is going to be the star of a remake, a TV series remake of Dan Hardy's Warrior. Remember that movie Warrior?
Yes, I actually have it here. Have it here. It's a good movie.
It's a good movie.
It's a good movie. I mean, and you know, for as little lines as that Tom Hardy had, and the story was kind of long, but when it picked up, it was like, whoa, we're here. You know? And you know, I'm interested to see Daniel Cormier's acting chops because he's a big WWE fanboy. First of all, he's a real big WWE fanboy.
Yeah,
and he actually cut a decent promo the last time him and Lesnar were in the ring together. You know, when he came up there and he pushed. It was you know what? It was cheesy, but it was really good. It was really good. So I was like, okay, maybe one day I'll see Cormier in there. We still may see Cormier in the WWE. He ain't doing nothing. He's just sitting there commentating. Something's gonna tell me he's calling Vince. Hey Vince, man, what's up? What's up?
I don't think we'll ever see Daniel Cormier in the squared circle. I think we at best will see him at the commentators table. Daniel Cormier. I don't watch it anymore, but at the same time, it's kind of one of those things where I don't see Daniel Cormier in that dad bod, that father figure. You know what I'm talking about. He ain't gonna get in the octagon and be able to sell. Like nobody wants to see that.
Not the octagon, but the squared circle.
I mean, squared circle. Sorry, nobody wants to see Daniel Cormier like that. No.
I'll be the first guy to say
in tights and wrestling boots.
He may need to shape up the bod a little bit, okay, a lot of it, all right, or maybe just he wrestles like the other boys in uniform, okay. He's got a shirt, some coveralls, or something like that, but because he doesn't have the body for tights. Let's just put it out there. He ain't got the body for tights.
So who's got the body for tights?
I see how you did that. By the way, I see how you did that. But go ahead. Who has the body for tights, sir?
Ring girls.
So
we covered the story about Khabib Nurmagomedov saying that ring girls are the most useless people in martial arts. He said, What is their function? You can show that it's the second round on the screen. Do they develop a sport, or do they help people see what second round is now? What are they doing? He goes, I realize that it is history. History has many mistakes. We've read history to avoid mistakes of the past in the future. We look at history, it says they are useless. That is my personal opinion. Everybody who loves ring girls came at Khabib's neck. They were like, look, number one, they were like, you can't disparage these women. They're working for a living just like anybody else. They have a job to do in the sport. They're fun. I even heard Michael Bisping say that ring girls help alleviate the aggression. They give us a mental aggression break by every round where we get the amygdala, the aggression that we get by watching the sport. Mirror neurons are getting us all hyped up. That what ring girls actually do is they give us a break from the aggression. Otherwise, you would see the audience get more feverish by not having the ring girls kind of like get people to calm down and think about something else. I don't buy it. I think that's pseudoscience. But at the end of the day, people came in defense of the ring girls. And Ariana Celeste, who we have followed and known since the the early days of the
God.
UFC. She's been there like a mainstay for a very long time. She said,
2010.
I don't need no defense. I can defend myself. And so she went on Instagram and she said, I've worked over 15 years in this industry and I've learned that it's easier to simply not care. For 15 years, we've been more than just ring girls. We've dedicated time in promoting the UFC and showing love and our time and our diehard fans through the touring the world and personal appearances. Because while the world is a very different place right now, I can still feel that energy and love every time we have a show with an audience. It's taken me 15 years of hard work, dedication, and time to be a badass, independently wealthy female. A real estate investor and owner of not just one, but 3 homes and properties, one located in LA, which is expensive, and a female who is not afraid to take risks and build for my future. You can call us useless, but to people like me who have worked this hard, it slips right off my shoulders. My life is too good to be unhappy. You don't have to like me, but you will respect me. Put some respect on my name. She said, last but not least, please tell me why reporters have nothing better to do than talk about ring girls. There has to be way better things to ask about. And I think that that's fair. She and Luciano Andrade, they've both become, they've used this platform to improve themselves personally and professionally. So it's, while I don't value what ring girls play for my personal enjoyment of the sport, I'm not going to disparage the people who serve the role of carrying the card with the number of the round.
Ring girls have been around since 1965. First time they've ever appeared was in Ring magazine. Okay.
Really?
Did you know that? Yes.
Did not
They've
know
been
that.
around that long. They've probably been around even longer, but that was the first official publication. It is proven that exactly what Michael Bisping has said, that they are there as a psychological distraction. Because think about some of those fights. Some of those fights that they have that are super aggressive and everything like that, you should really pay attention to the crowd more than the fight, because you can feel the aggression, the waves of aggression that is going on, because that's what fights do. We see the aggression, it generates the aggression within us. And that much energy in a testosterone-filled arena, and then you add in beer and other things that'll make your inhibitions loose, that ring girl is actually a lifesaver sometimes. Because when she comes out, when she comes out, everybody stops looking at the fighters and starts looking at her. The regression levels starts going down a little bit. If it was, I'll throw it out there, because we talk about the Hall of Fame fight between Diego Sanchez and Clay Guida. I would have paid money to have the crowd to have no ring girl there and watch the crowd and see how bad it would have got. They would have to clear it out the place, because they were literally rock'em sock'em. The ring girl does her job. Now, also, anybody that hates on ring girls, okay, or because let's put it out there, ring girls are also models too, all right? But anybody who hates on ring girls, they don't watch enough Univision or Telemundo to understand the true psychological aspect that ring girls provide out there. I advise you to watch Univision and watch Telemundo and really watch, because every show on there has ring girls. And when I say ring girls, I mean even the kids shows have ring girls on there. I advise you to watch them, all right, because they get the dads to watch too. The kids are watching the little happy clown and everything, and the ring girls are there so the dad will watch too.
What you just heard is solely the opinion of the speaker and does not reflect the opinions of anyone else on the Combat Sports Talk podcast or anyone affiliated with this program.
Yeah, we had to go
It
there.
doesn't even. It could be the weather show. It could be the news. There's always 2 ring girls there. There's always 2.
Oh my gosh. All right. There you have it. Those are the stories that we wanted to cover on this show. We've got one segment left, and that is the fight card.
y'all didn't know how long I wanted to wait. We talked about that article for a long time. I was like, I cannot wait. I cannot wait because I was going to throw it out there. Okay.
You got me to play the disclaimer. You got me to drop it. I had to drop the disclaimer. Oh my gosh. I knew you were waiting for something. I could see that smile on you.
Weeks, people. Weeks. Okay.
All right. Hey, the fight card. We got a fight coming up. UFC Vegas 37, Smith versus Spann, Saturday, September 18th, 2021, at the Apex Arena in Las Vegas, Nevada. We've got 6 fights on the card. Antonio Arroyo versus Joaquin Buckley. Joaquin Buckley sent the dentist home, right? Darren Stewart, Joaquin Buckley finished Darren Stewart. He was part of the 60, and Joaquin Buckley is already back into the octagon, fighting Antonio Arroyo at 185 pounds. You got Christos Giagos versus Arman Sarukin, and they're fighting at 155. Mandy Bohm versus Ariane Lipski. You got Jim Miller versus Nicholas Mota. Devin Clark versus Ion Cutelabra. And then in the main event of the evening, you got Anthony the Lionheart Smith versus Ryan Spann. We're going to make our flash fight picks on the main event only. Anthony Lionheart Smith versus Ryan Spann. Who you got?
You know what? Because Lionheart has did us a slide on Mr. Onyebuchi, I'm still going with the Lionheart, man. Okay. He did us one for that, so I'm always going to root for Lionheart.
You know, I feel like I should root for Anthony Lionheart Smith just because we're cousins, keeping it within the family and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And you know, but Ryan and I are namesakes.
So you're doing that.
If they were doing a tag team, I would totally take the team of Ryan Spann and Anthony Smith because they got my name all on it. But I'm gonna go and risk eating some crow because I'm going Ryan Spann. There you go. He's got my initials, Ryan Spann, Ryan Smith. Let's do it.
Yeah, literally, they could have a tag team called Ryan Smith.
They could.
They could literally have that tag team, dude.
Yeah, that's it. So, but yeah, I'm gonna pick Ryan Spann. I'm gonna see what he can do. Honestly, I feel like Anthony Lionheart Smith is such a veteran. He's got great skill in the octagon. He's not someone to be taken lightly, and he's got knockout power as well. So, but I'm going Ryan Spann. I like what he's doing. We'll see what he does on Saturday night in the Apex Arena in Las Vegas, Nevada. All right. Indeed. Follow us on social media on Instagram. I'm at Combat Sports Talk.
And I'm at Keys to Victory, and that's Keys with an ES.
And you can find us on our website at www.combatsportstalk.com. We are on all of your favorite podcasting platforms. I want to send a shout out to MMA Junkie, MMA Fighting, MMA Mania, Bloody Elbow, and the Intelligent Defense Discussion Group, and all the other sites that help provide some of the stories that we use on our show. So, on behalf of John Keys, my name is Ryan Smith, reminding you to keep your hands up, your chin tucked, and throw bombs. We'll catch you next time.